Hi, folks. I hope you are well. So, church today. Yes, I went down to the vineyard again. Interesting. Before the service, I was talking to the man that I gave the free wines to before and talking to him about basically the video I did yesterday, talking about Peter. And as I was talking to him, suddenly God said something to me. And, oof, okay. What I then understood was quite remarkable. In the moment, it was just in the moment. And I said to the bloke, I said, yeah, what just came to me, something I never even thought of before, is that Peter was the one that, when the Lord was talking about, he prefers you to be hot and cold, and he will puke you out if you're lukewarm. The other disciples, all of them, basically were lukewarm. Peter was hot and cold. And that's what God just gave me at that time. And I thought, oh, well, because I've been asking the question, why on earth would Peter be chosen as the rock? Well, the answer is because he at least tried to be hot. The others didn't. The others thought that where they were was good enough. The others thought that whatever the Lord was telling them to do or wanted to do was good enough. That was okay. Cool. They were happy to be along for the ride, sort of thing. Yeah. Whereas Peter, he tried different things. He was the one who got out of the boat. Now, he got out of the boat because he was Peter. But again, it's because it wasn't good enough for him just to be part of it. He wanted to be involved. He wanted to learn. He wanted to understand. And cool. But then they had the service. They were looking at John 20, the resurrection, and Yeshua going to the disciples afterwards. And something that struck me as the pastor Archie was talking. Again, something that God gave me as I was just sitting there. Something that really sprung out heavy in a big way. Yeshua could not have been risen if he hadn't given his life. That's the same for everyone else. You cannot rise if you haven't given your life. And I was like, oof, okay. It's true. Yeah. So I shared that with the pastor afterwards, and he was a bit open-eyed and went, oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. And so, yeah. I shared a few things with him after the service. And yeah. Well, actually, at one point in time, I noticed a few things that were very, very typical of church. There's the family who have lots of children and the baby who had the swollen head. When they came in, I said to the lady, so how's the baby? She said, oh, he's wonderful. He's really good now. But then when they offered prayer for people, she went forward again with the baby. So therefore she lied to me. Pretty much, I guess. I'm guessing she lied to me because that's what people do. They say what they think you want to hear. Rather than truth, they say the lie. Then there's the man who is a guitarist at the filling station, his wife who's one of the singers and one of the worship leaders in this church. He's the one with the vein that's swollen and painful. Well, yeah, he again went forward for prayer. Probably for that again. And so I just said to God, okay. Because I said to that man, go to God about it. Yeah, if God wants to use me, of course, he will never go to God about that. Because what people do is they do according to church. When church has people in the front that are supposed to be praying, they will only trust them. They won't trust anyone else. Because they don't go to God. They won't go to God. And this is something that I understood the other day. In church, they won't go to God about people. They go to God about issues and about things, but not about people. Not about who people are in God's eyes, not about whether that person can be trusted. They trust you based upon the boxes that you have to tick to show whether you are churchy, and therefore whether church should trust you. You've got to tick all these boxes. If you tick the boxes, then they trust you. But before you tick all the boxes, they don't trust you. You won't be invited to speak. You won't be someone who they would look at for anything. You won't be invited to any homes for lunch or dinner or anything like that. And yeah, and you won't be invited. They won't come to you for prayer, even if you are someone who understands prayer. Even if you are someone who says, "Look, I won't pray for you unless God is telling you to come to me. Therefore, unless we know that God's going to do something, I won't pray for you." Instead, they'd rather go to people in the front of the church who are hoping that God's going to do something, but they don't know that God's going to do something. And most of the time, God doesn't do anything because that's not God's way. We're supposed to agree faith-based, not hope-based. Because the Lord said, "Any two that agree on one thing, that I shall do." Well, if they're only hoping, there's no real agreement, is there? Not in faith. There could be agreement in hope, but that's not really what the Bible means in that sense. So it's talking about your faith coming together in agreements for that thing. Well, yeah, they don't do that. Yeah. And so, yeah, I just said to God, fine. I said, with regards to the man with the varicose vein that's swollen, okay. When it gets to the point where he can't walk, and he's calling out for me to help him, then I help. But he's got to get to the point where he's desperate, because the reality is, if he keeps going forward and doing things according to church, then I can't help him. I can't. Because every time he goes forward and it doesn't happen, that's only damaging his faith. We've got to get to the point where his desperation is far bigger than the damage to his faith. And so, yeah. So, yeah, that's the situation. Is that going to happen? I don't care. I don't. It's not my concern. If it does, then, I will meet with the person and I will seek God as what God wants to do. And I'll spend time with him, with that man, and, getting towards that point of him receiving absolute healing. But I'm not going to play games with people. I'm certainly not going to play the churchy game. I'm not going to do that. It's too important to do that. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play. I know at some point in time I'm going to be walking away from this church. I know that. There's no doubt about it, because, every time you just see the same thing. You just see it again. The pastor was working on his presentation even before the service happened. The person who's doing the computer and the screen, putting everything up there, knew exactly what to put up, when to put it up. Why? Because they practiced it. Right? They practiced and they're now at a point of perfecting and presenting. Yes? Yeah. That ain't for me. Sorry, none of that is for me. None of it at all. And yeah, it isn't for me. And today was supposed to be about the resurrection. But again, they spent a lot of time today speaking about their future plans and what they're doing. They've got the summer event, in the park that they're now involved in, along with the River Church and the Community Church of Rick. And so, realistically speaking, they're doing that. And they talked about they want to have a football team in the church now, because in that event they're going to be five-a-side competition with the churches. But again, I'm not sure how that's going to work. There's only 3 churches. Well, maybe I should tell the African church they can enter the five-a-side team. I think they'll win. But there you go. Well, they're young men. They're young men with tons of energy, so I think they'll probably win. Unless one of the churches has an ex-professional or professional player that can be a ringer. Yeah, or 2 or 3 of those. So, yeah. Will I get involved? Probably not. No. No, because again, it's what it is. It's just... They're going to want churchy people to be involved. They're going to want, whoever is helping to train the team, they're going to want it to be someone who's churchy. Someone who fits in with churches. Someone who does things according to church. As I say, whenever I see these people, like one of the people who leads worship, him and his wife, they are definitely the people that this church basically looks at for doing stuff. And they're very churchy, both of them. And both of them just irritate me. When I see them, when I see what they do and the way they just irritate me because they are the problem with church. Again, I don't blame them for it because they've learned this behaviour based upon what church was looking for. But yeah, it would be untrue to say that that doesn't annoy me because it does. I've seen it so many times. I've seen people like them so many times and they just irritate me. They're exactly what good little Christians are, and that's just so irritating. But there you go. As I say, can't blame them for it because the reality is they've learned that behaviour because that behaviour was acceptable. And yeah, that behaviour was in the church long before they got in the church. Long before they were even born. That behaviour was already in the church. And that was already the accepted behaviour. Being a good little Christian was already there. So you can't blame them for it. It's just that they are, a reminder of basically the sort of people that have taken the church to where it is, to the mess that it is in. Yeah, this safe space, comfortable, serving the community. Yeah. Just, yeah. But there you go. It is what it is. So, as I say, at one point, I believed that I could recommend this church. And the longer I'm in it, the more I realise that no, I can't. It's no different to any other. But, however, I would say Archie, I quite like Archie, he's fine. Yeah. And again, there are some lovely people in this church. Some very nice people. But, yeah. I'm never going to be accepted in there as a full, proper member of that church because I don't behave in the way... I'm never going to tick the boxes. So, yeah. It is what it is. You take care. God bless.